A case in point is the so-called new economic model. The government promised the world it would be announced by the end of last year. It was put off to the end of this month. Now we are told we'll be getting just the first part of it, and that we will be getting merely a proposal for the new economic model from the National Economic Advisory Council. Clearly, politics has intruded. The new economic model has been opposed by groups that are concerned that the new economic model might replace the new economic policy. The new economic model might not turn out to be so new after all. The irony in all this is that there is nothing to replace. The new economic policy is the opposite of new. It is defunct and is no longer an official government policy because it was replaced by the new development policy, another old new policy in 1991. The new economic policy was brought back in its afterlife as a slogan by the leadership of UMNO Youth in 2004. It was and remains the most low-cost way to portray oneself as a Malay champion. Thus, at a time when we are genuinely in need of bold new economic measures, we are hamstrung by the ghost of dead policies with the word new in them. What happens when good policy outlives its time and survives as a slogan? The new economic policy was a 20-year program. It has become, in the imaginations of some, the center of a permanently racialized socio-economic framework. Tun Razak and Tun Dr. Ismail, in the age of the fixed telephone, you even needed to go through an operator. For 20 years would be enough. Its champions in the age of instant messaging talk about 100 or 450 years of Malay dependency. It had a national agenda to eradicate poverty and address structural inequalities between the races for the sake of equity and unity. The Malays were unfairly concentrated in low-income sectors such as agriculture. The aim was to remove colonial-era silos of economic roles in our economy. It has been trivialized into a concern with obtaining equity and contracts by racial quotas. The new economic policy was to diversify the Malay economy beyond certain stereotyped occupations. It is now about feeding a class of party-linked people whose main economic function is to obtain and resell government contracts and concessions. The new economic policy saw poverty as a national Malaysian problem that engaged the interest and idealism of all Malaysians. People like James Puthuchearys were at the forefront of articulating this concern. Its present-day proponents portray poverty as a communal problem. The new economic policy was a unity policy. Nowhere in its terms was any race specified. It has been reinvented as an inalienable platform of a Malay agenda that at one and the same time asserts Malay supremacy and perpetuates the myth of Malay dependency. It was meant to unite our citizens by making economic arrangements fairer and de-racializing our economy. In its implementation, it became a project to enrich a selection of Malay capitalists. James Puthuchearys had warned back in 1959 that this was bound to fail. And I quote, "The presence of Chinese capitalists has not noticeably helped solve the poverty of Chinese households. Those who think that the economic position of the Malays can be improved by creating a few Malay capitalists, thus making a few Malays well-to-do, will have to think again." Close quote. by James Puthuchearys. The new economic policies aim to restructure society and to ensure a more equitable distribution of economic growth was justified on principles of social justice, not claims of racial privilege. This is an important point. The new economic policy was acceptable to all Malaysians because its justification was universal rather than racial, ethical rather than opportunistic. It appealed to Malaysians' sense of social justice and not to any notion of racial supremacy. We were a policy with a 20-year horizon in pursuit of a set of measurable outcomes. We were not devising a doctrine for a permanent socio-economic arrangement. We did not make the damaging assumption of the permanently dependent Malay. Today, we are in a foundational crisis, both of our politics and of our economy. Politically and economically, we have come to the end of the road for an old way of managing things. It is said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all the time. Well, these days, the time you have in which to fool people is measured in minutes, not years. The world is greatly changed. The next move we must make is not a step, but a leap that changes the very ground we play on. The new economic policy is over. And I repeat, the new economic policy is over. I ask the government to have the courage to face up to this. The people already know. The real issue is not whether the new economic policy is to be continued or not, but whether we have the imagination and courage to come up with something which better addresses the real challenges of growth, equity, and unity of our time. And it's working best. The new economic policy secured national unity and provided a stable foundation for economic growth. Taken out of its policy context, a context that James helped frame and turn into a political program for the extension of special privilege, it has been distorted into something that its formulators, people such as the late Tengku Razaleigh and Dr. Ismail, would have absolutely abhorred. It is now the primary justification and cover for corruption, crony capitalism, and money politics. And it is corruption, cronyism, and money politics that rob us and destroy our future. No one who really cares about our country can approve of the role the new economic policy now plays in distorting the way we think about the economy, of our people, of our future, and retarded our ability to formulate forward-looking economic strategies.